What? What? I know, wait just a second. Okay, so you probably can see me, right? You can write if you want to. Like on the chat. Okay. Wait. That's very good that you can see me. I like that there's literally no one. Baby, if you're still watching, can you please send a message? If you're still watching. What? The music? The music is very loud? Can you write if the music is very loud? I know it's very loud. Thank you, baby. So, Let me just read my notebook so I can. Okay, let me just read my notebook so I can see what we can talk about. Okay, yeah, we can talk about maybe the world in general. So, okay, not this one. Nice. So I'm just gonna talk about the ethics of starting a business, any business, and why I think I'm wrong and why I think I'm right. So basically what I'm saying here is that so basically in the notebook I wrote a very dual decision that is almost impossible to make. Continue with my morals and what I believe in, or go in the money path. The second is the easiest to explain. Going the money path means being free financially. That will presuppose play the society game in any way to achieve that. Both goals are similar, if not the same. Build a business, whatever, get into stocks, real estate, whatever. There are countless ways to make money, right? There are countless ways to make money, but all purpose. What the fuck I wrote here? The problem is the egoism in all of it. Should I live my life wanting to be free? What if everyone would do that? It would be easy. Don't care about anyone less and forget, okay? So basically what I'm saying is that people write the struggle of working a 9 to 5. So basically that's usually not a 9 to 5, it's usually an 8 to 6. I work an 8 to 6. Which is basically the same, but I for an hour. So like I have an hour where they don't pay me as a break. So they can even pay me for a break, and I can even go home because I will literally not make it in time to go back and forth. So basically I'm stuck there and they still don't pay me, which I think is unethical. So the problem with the 9 to 5 is that it fucking sucks your soul. It sucks the life out of you, just working for a company. When you're working for a company, when you're like an employee, you're working for a business. Everything in you work for or people work for is a business. Either they have a business or they're working for that business. So everything is a business. So it's not just selling socks or Spider-Man cups on the internet. So when you go to the grocery store, you're going into a business, buying their product. Everything is a product and everything is a business. Even when you're watching YouTube is also business, obviously. Everything is a business, and everybody that you either work for a business or you have a business, right? Not all people can have a business, right? For business to succeed, you have to have workers that work for that business, and that's where it falls down for me a bit. Because yes, some businesses are very useful, like YouTube. I would say some businesses are not useful, and useful is also a word that you can't really use, because what is useful anyway? Watching videos on the internet is not useful. Nothing is useful. Useful for what? For education? Yes, it's useful for education. Education is useful for something? Yes, for life. To have a good life. Is it useful to have a good life? Yes. Is it useful to live? Whatever. You always get down to the fact that it's useful for a specific aspect. Like for education, YouTube is useful. Obviously, there's some things that you cannot find on YouTube, or maybe there's some things that YouTube also has. It doesn't only have education. I would say that the most part is entertainment, and entertainment is not as useful as education, right? Nothing is useful, nothing is so, but in a specific condition, I would say that education is more useful than entertainment. Obviously, entertainment is beneficial, right? Obviously, relaxation is a necessary requirement to live a healthy life, like is food, like is sleep. It's almost like, and I'm not only talking about entertainment, watching videos on YouTube, but it should also playing with friends or talking with friends or just going out. That's relaxing. So entertainment could also be seen as relaxing. What I'm saying is that when people say start a business because you don't want to work a 9 to 5, you don't start a business to solve a problem, right? Because most of the and that's where it comes. You create a business and then you create more opportunities for other people to work for you and to have money. So you basically, most people, I would say, that create a business, some people create a business to escape working for someone else's business, and that's not really solving a problem. That's just adding another business that we may not need. Like, do we need more businesses? Like, for example, do we need another YouTube, or do we need, I cannot have anything that is required. Nothing is required. Like, what is required for survival is food, shelter, and sleep. So I would say that everything that is related to properties or shelter, properties or real estate, water, electricity, those are basically even electricity is not a basic necessity, right? Even electricity is not a basic necessity, but it makes your life easier in a sense. And when we're going towards a world that is the easiest it ever been. So what do we need now? We do we need more businesses? Like, for example, do we need, right? I've seen a lot of people that start a clothing brand. We don't need another clothing brand, right? We don't need another clothing brand. Like, we don't need another. Like, we don't need another. How is it called? We don't need another clothing brand. Like, we need another app for delivery, because I've seen countless app. Like, I'm not gonna mention them, but there's a lot of apps. And do we really need a lot of apps? And obviously we live in a capitalistic world, so what I'm saying is not that we should have just one app, right? Because you have the choice. Like, for example, you also have different companies of phones. Like, for example, whatever, I'm not gonna name them because I don't know if it's illegal and I don't want to make advertisement for them. But even for tomato, for pasta, there's countless brands, right? And I've also thought about this, and I've thought, well, why don't we have just one brand, right? So I'm not gonna get into politics, but it's just related to what I was saying. And that's not really a problem to solve. You just have more choices if you have like multiple business. in the same niche. For example, pasta. You have very, very different brands. But it gets to if it would be best for us to have just one brand of pasta. Maybe you don't like that pasta. Maybe you like another brand of pasta. Maybe you like another pasta, right? So it always comes down to the fact that what I'm saying is just stupid and I never get anywhere. But that doesn't matter because nothing matters. So I'm always like when I'm talking, I'm contradicting myself and I'm like proving myself that I'm wrong, which is very funny. So what would happen if we only had one brand of phones, one brand of constructions, or one brand, like a monopoly, right? You have a monopoly of every niche sector. Like I said, I don't know anything about economics. I don't know anything about anything actually. What I'm saying is just I just want to logically arrive there. So you would basically have a monopoly, and when you have a monopoly, from what I know, you basically you can usually raise the prices if you are egoistical as a company, and you can raise the prices, and since you don't have competitors, you can do that. But why it's good that you have competitors is that you cannot raise the price as at maximum to have maximum profit, right? Because if you have two companies of a phone, and one company says, okay, I have a monopoly, I will raise the price at $2,000 because I'm the only one that sells phones, right? So people can just, I don't care about what people think. I will just raise the price and I will have to buy it if they want the phone because I don't have any competition. So I am allowed to raise the price as much as I want for profit. But if you have another competitor, you raise the price of a phone at $2,000, then the other company says, okay, well, they're not definitely gonna go to you, they're gonna go to me. And I set the price at 1,000. Also, it is naturally a monopoly is very hard to naturally exist, because let's say there's only one brand of pasta and I don't really like that pasta, right? And I have an idea to make this pasta with another type of grain, right? I will start another business, and that's how mostly businesses arise. People having different ideas and people thinking they can do better, or they can do it in a different way to have different flavors, and that's good. The problem is when it doesn't come from a point of wanting to have wanting to create, having your own ideas and wanting to create something that maybe other people will like. It's just from the point of making money to escape and to not work for another person's business, right? And everything contradicts itself in my opinion, even what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to arrive to a logical conclusion to the fact that when people say to start a business, to not work a 9 to 5 anymore, because from what I've seen, I'm not the only one that doesn't like working a 9 to 5, right? Too many hours, draining, you're working for a company that most of the time you don't really care about, right? And people say you should start a business, or basically the only way is to start a business, right? From what I said before. But if you think about it, from what I said before, I said that either you work for a business or you own a business. I don't think there's any other circumstances, right? Elon Musk is a business owner. The people, even the highest grade, I don't know, maybe the co-CEO, or I don't know how it's called, he's still working for that company. Maybe. Although it's different because maybe he has stocks, right? So he has a percentage of the company. Because also Elon Musk, like even a CEO has to work for his business. So it gets more complicated. So I'm trying to understand it by myself. So it gets more complicated. So it's not as black as white as I thought. I don't think that's the point what I was saying. What I was saying is that not everybody can start a business, right? You still have to, if you want a, a functioning society, you have to have people that are cashier, people that put the stuff back on the shelf at the supermarket. You have people that have to clean, right? Those people have to exist. And what I don't like is that I don't want those people to do that, right? I don't want to do that, and I don't want them to do it either. But you really can't do that because not everybody can start a business. And if the problem of working a 9 to 5 and working for another company is a problem that everybody has, it's draining and soulless, and it takes basically your life away. And from what I've seen, a lot of people, so the majority of people that work a 9 to 5 don't like it, right? They don't get as much money as they wanted, especially if they're not the CEO. And yes, there's some people that have higher status in that company, but they're still working for that company. So they still don't own the company as much as the CEO. They may own the shares, but they don't own the company as much as the CEO, right? And the CEO, obviously, from what I've seen, earns much more, like completely different salaries. Not even salaries. He doesn't even earn. What Elon Musk, whatever, it's not. So basically, he has more money, right? So he can buy a yacht. I cannot at all. I'm probably the the first commander, let's say, of any company. Probably cannot buy as many yachts as the CEO. I think that's in mostly all the companies, right? All the corporations. Definitely there's some whatever. I'm just going out of the. I'm just derailing the subject. What I'm saying is that I don't like the idea that, like, and this is also a logical fallacy that I have, is that if not everyone can do it, then it's not a viable option, right? Like, yes, starting a business is a great move, but when I think about this stuff, is I think, well, let's say everyone has this problem that they want to be financially free, right? I would think that most people want to do that, right? Well, most people can't be financially free the way people preach to start a business, right? Let's say everyone starts a business. Everyone that starts a business, they have to sell to somebody. So I'm just imagining a world where everybody owns the business and nobody works for other people's businesses. So you almost basically go back to, I don't remember how it's called. Oh my god. When you trade stuff, how is it called when you trade stuff? So it's called bartering. So basically it would be if everybody on earth would have a business, wouldn't it be a bit like bartering? Right? Because let's say you are selling something. I think that basically what was before having a currency like money. It would be almost like I don't know, I have something to sell, right? So basically to have a business you have to sell something. Either a product, you have to sell a product. Either be food, clothes, whatever, it's still a product. You have to sell a product. So let's say in my garden I sell potatoes. I have potatoes in my garden and I sell potatoes, right? I would say that if everybody had a business, we would go back to bartering. And that's why not everybody can have a business. So people that say to escape financial freedom they have to have a business. In my opinion, yes, it works for somebody, but it can't work for everybody. And I want to minimize the pain for other people. Like, I don't want it to be competitive, right? I don't want to prevail on somebody else because I am I have the ability to I have the option, I have the money, I have the social situation to be able to buy books to inform myself where other people can't, right? So I wanted to be fair for everybody. Some people are born with a lower IQ, right? I'm not saying that I have a high IQ. Maybe I'm average. I don't care, whatever, right? But I know that I have access to books, and I know that I can inform myself. What I don't like is that when they say that they don't try to solve the discrepancy between rich people and normal people and average people that are just working 9 to 5. There's countless of people that are very smart but still they work at McDonald's or they work at this low-income company, low-income jobs. And when I want a solution, I want a universal solution that can work for everybody, right? Because not everybody can have a business, not everybody has the right mindset, and the even the genetic factor to have a business, right? Maybe you don't have the knowledge, maybe you will never have the knowledge because your a certain part of your brain isn't working. It's not, I'm not saying that it's not working, but it's other people have the right structure, let's say, to they have determined betterly genetically to have a business and to run a business, right? So I would say that Elon Musk can run a business better than me, obviously, right? That's why I still don't have a business. And if you go by the idea that, and if you go by the idea of hard determinism, people saying you can do it, you can do it. You don't think about the genetics that you can't run a business because you can't, or you basically limit yourself. And that's true because that's so deterministic. So thinking that you can start a business even though genetically you can't, being delusional is technically still deterministic, right? And that's also a problem that I have, because let's say that I know that, however, I don't know, probably it's impossible to find out, but I know that no matter what I do, it's impossible for me, based on my environment, my circumstances, my actions, my chemical reactions in the brain, how frequent they happen, and the people that I have in my life, the jobs that I work, the opportunities, the luck, whatever, all these things that come into to form my life. Maybe I will never be able to start a business, I will ever be able to be financially free. And if I go by the road that I believe that I cannot start a business because of the things, then deterministically I will have different outcomes than not knowing that I couldn't in the first place. I would say that the person that doesn't know that he can't and he believes that he can, he will have a different outcome. And that's what pisses me off, because once you know something, it's really hard for you to lobotomize yourself and to stop thinking that that's true, right? Once you know the truth, it's hard to be delusional. It's almost like I always wrote that this quote is that I would rather achieve something in life, or I would rather succeed or find truth through the light than through ignorance. Through the light meaning actually knowing the truth and still thinking and still knowing that the best outcome to achieve that particular goal is to not believe the truth, or to not get credit to the truth, because I'm almost 100% certain that if I find out that maybe I cannot go to the NBA because I am 6 foot and I'm not that tall, and my legs are my calves are not the best calves for basketball, and the muscle fibers in my legs are not optimal for that, and I find out deterministically that my genetics and my way of thinking doesn't let me achieve the goal of going to the NBA. If I think that I will never go to the NBA, but if I know that, right, if I know that I can't genetically, and basically you can choose to ignore it, and that choosing to ignore it and be delusional is not on my choice. Like I can choose to be ignorant because it's deterministic, so it has to come from past circumstances. But even choosing, even for example, you know that you can go to the MBA based on your genetics and your environment and whatever everything it is. You know that you can't, and you try to be delusional, but you know, and you say that you can't be delusional, even though you think delusional, even though you think that whatever. Let me rephrase it. So let's say you have the machine of, you have a way of knowing that you can go to the MBA because of your genetics and your environment. You thinking that you can go, you won't go to the MBA. You thinking that you can go, but thinking that the best way to go is to be delusional, and that's the best way to go. That gives you more chance than thinking that you can't and being delusional. And there's another that is almost like an infinite loop, where you think you know that you can't. So this is the truth. You know that you can't, but you are delusional. But you realize that even being delusional is deterministic, and even saying that being delusional is deterministic. And when you think about it, you think that even the thought of believing that being delusional about the deterministic fact is deterministic, that in itself is deterministic, right? So the best option is to be delusional and to just lobotomize yourself and to stop thinking, and that's what I'm not gonna do, because that goes against my values that apparently I do have, even though I say that morals are not universal, and since morals are relative to the individual, I have these morals that are not true universally, so I technically don't have to follow, but are true for me. I'm just gonna go a bit and prepare something to eat. I don't know how I can. Oh my god. Did you follow a bit of this game? Maybe asking a philosophical question, and then I. So right now I'm just gonna eat a piece of bread with cheese because I'm broke, and I'm a loser by standard society, honestly, and I don't care. So, and I will show you how beautiful the cheese on the bread is, and how beautiful it is to put it. The bread is crumbling, so that's the good news. looks appetizing for insane people like me. I would say it's delicious. So I'm just gonna cover the unwashed dishes. So basically what I'm trying to do now is that I'm trying to find the solution to whatever problem I wanted to find the solution for, and I always find out going nowhere. I'm just like looking at the problem more and finding no solution. So from the last video that I made about, it was about I when I recently finished Attack on Titan, I basically made a video about, I mean it's my last video, so if anybody's watching you can go watch it. It's very bad in my opinion. I didn't know what to say and I still don't know what to say now, but I would think that, and I would want to believe that I know more about what I say than before. That would be something that I would like to believe. So I was talking about antinatalism, because I think Zeke Hager pointed at it, and I also talked about ethics, about how I think that morals are not universal and that relative to the society and specifically relative to the individual. And very good. If my girlfriend is watching, I'm eating her chips. So I was talking about in the video, since I know more stuff about antinatalism and I've thought about it more, I would like to give value, my opinion on antinatalism, right? So the whole point is that it is immoral to bring a child into existence because you can't ask for permission, therefore it is immoral because they will suffer pain, and bringing them from the non-existent state to the living state will mean that they will have to experience, yes, pleasure, but they will also experience an enormous amount of pain, right? That can be either little or either super high. Like if you are born with certain disabilities, it can always happen, knock on wood. But what the whole point is that they think it's moral. They think it's immoral to bring a child into into life, because you can't ask for permission. You obviously can't ask for permission philosophically because they're non-existent. So the option is removed completely. So you can't even. It's not like they don't ask people that bring kids into this world. It's not like they don't want to ask for permission. It's that you literally can't ask for permission, right? And there's a lot of debates, right, if life is worth it or not, and I'm not gonna talk about that because I think it's a bit sensitive for YouTube. I'm just gonna talk about the philosophy of antinatalism and how they're, like I said, I don't know anything, so I'm not stating any truth. I'm not trying to solve the universe. I'm just a man in the kitchen with the unwashed dishes, trying to not go insane by all the thoughts that he has in his head, by just saying it on camera. And I think that's what most people did. I mean, it's not like I'm going insane. It's just that it's like my head is filled with thoughts, and if I don't get it out, then I just get very overthinking, and I start overthinking, I get very exhausted. So I don't like being not saying the truth on YouTube, like being like not. I don't want to be controversial, because YouTube, I've heard that it's a bit controversial, and I want to have problems. But I will just state the truth. To not. I was just still say. Sorry. I will just still say my opinion, but I don't want it to be. I think the music is too loud, honestly. So I'm just gonna go a bit quicker, a bit closer. Yeah, about antinatalism. So when they say that it's immoral to bring a child into this world because you can't ask for permission, are they saying that it is a universal moral claim? It is a moral claim when you say that it's immoral, right? So it's bad, you shouldn't do it, right? When you say that it's immoral, I would presume that you say that you shouldn't do it, or that it's wrong in some sense. That technically would mean that it's a universal moral, right? Or maybe the only universal moral is that you can bring child into this world, but that would be only not a universal moral. It would be a moral, a universal human moral, if it makes sense. So I think that some morals are not universal in the sense that it is written in the universe, or it is independent by humans, right? I think it's still dependent by humans. It's still dependent by biology of humans. Like, for example, I really believe, and I don't know if it's true neurologically and biologically, that we have some shared morals. That's obviously true, but everybody, probably not, right? If you scale up the population of humanity, like from 100 to 8 billion, it's obviously going to be much more possible, much more probable to have some deformities in the functionality of the brain, like psychopaths, right? Psychopaths want to kill. Obviously, from what I know, that normal people, I would say that not people that the average people don't do crime, right? Or don't take other people's lives, because, and I would say that it's a different topic, but what I'm trying to say here is that if you scale up, like if everybody has let's say a normal brain in the range of, like, for example, a normal brain, right, like the typical brain of a human, they are much probable to have similar traits, right? So I would think that every average brain, every normal brain, right, wants to eat, wants to sleep, wants to have connection with other human beings. And I would say that if you scale the that's what I'm saying, that saying for the antinatalist that this moral claim kind of quiet. You're kind of quiet because of the sounds around you, by the way. Can you come and show me, because I don't know if I. Yes, I know it's loud. It's the So you can hear me. I mean, I'm just gonna. Okay, I think you can hear me now. So, what I was saying is that I would say that humans have more shared values if the population is lower. As you scale the population to 8 billion to a trillion, you will always have divergences, right? You will have more psychopaths. You have more people that are disabled, that cannot talk, maybe with cerebral palsy, or I don't know how it's called. So you have more deformities from the normal brain, right? From the brain that is mostly optimized for whatever human are optimized for. My point is that if you have 100 people on Earth, right, you would probably have just one psychopath, right? The other 99 people would probably say that it's wrong to kill, right? Even if they're not philosophers, they would still say that it's not wrong to kill, because they would feel it emotionally, right? Biologically, they would probably build a society, right? Because it's encoded in our DNA. They would probably seek uh, attention from other people. They would try to communicate with them. They would try to bond with each other, because that's what we did in best, and that's what our DNA is genetically encoded to for us to do, right? Because it's having a society and having more people to, it gives you a higher percentage of survival, right? And that would still be a person that doesn't agree with that, because maybe he definitely has a different brain and different environment, but that person is not technically optimized for survival. And as you scale the population to 8 billion or a trillion, those uh, not I'm not saying deformities, divergence from the normal, from the average, are different and more, and there's more variety, right? uh, and that's also how I proved technically that morals are not universal, because uh, I asked the question: if, let's say, we had just 100 people on Earth, and everybody thought had a shared value, right? Every one of them, doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's don't kill, or killing is wrong, or raising the voice at another person is wrong. If everybody believed out of those 100, it would still not make raising the voice to somebody else a moral, a universal moral, because the definition of a universal moral is that it's not dependent on. So before I go to that, to the definition, I would want to say that for 8 billion, right, it is much more probable for the, let's say those 100 people have a share value, right? You would think that it's share value out of all of 100 people, every one of them thinks that raising the voice to somebody else is wrong and you shouldn't do it, right? That's a moral claim. If you scale the population to 1,000 or 8 billion, right, or a trillion, it is much more probable to have, it is mathematically almost certain that you will have people that don't think like that, right? It will be people that are born with certain condition that affects a part of the brain that maybe the prefrontal cortex or the amygdala, and they have a different, like psychopaths, for example, that they don't have emotions, or they have less. I would say that they have less emotions, and they don't have. I would say it's not the amygdala is not as active in normal brains, and you will have that as you scale the population more. What I'm saying that is that uh, it can be that if in the first scenario where 100 people all had a shared value, it will create a universal moral. That would mean that as you scale the population, that's obviously naturally what happened, right? You would lose the value of moral, universal moral, right? Because a universal moral cannot be dependent on human, and in this case it would be dependent on the size and on the number of humans, of total humans. Although, as I'm saying this, I'm sorry, as I'm saying this, I realize that I have a contradiction, right? Came up a contradiction. So um, technically, if a moral is universal, it is not dependent on a human. Therefore, it is not even if humans don't agree with that moral, is still not, it still doesn't make the universal moral not universal, right? If like, let's say there was a universal moral, I don't even know how you could prove that, right? And maybe you can't prove that, and maybe that's why there's no universal moral, because you couldn't prove it, because it's not dependent on anything. It's independent, right? That's technically what it would be to what? That's technically what it would be to for a moral to be universal, right? Let's say you had there's only one universal moral, right? And that universal moral says, let me think. That universal moral says that you cannot slap other people in any circumstances, right? Where would you find out that you can do that, and how will it work, right? Because there's nobody stopping you. If that moral was actually universal, there's nobody stopping you from slapping another person, right? So you couldn't find out. The only way for a universal moral to exist would be for God to exist, right? God says that, let's say the Christian. I'm sorry. What do you want? You want me to go to Mega? I was talking about philosophy and you want me to go to Mega. Yes, I'm reading your comment. But I thought you wanted to make a philosophical question. Fuck you, honestly. I was speaking. If you listen to me, I don't have much more, and you say what if you agree or not. So I actually came to the conclusion that I didn't arrive before, and no, baby, you're not watching. You're not watching. I see you. But you're not watching. Yes, I know it's But on this ketchup, more. What is the ketchup? What the fuck? Where is the ketchup? The ketchup. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So like I was saying, I think I found another perspective of why universal morals cannot exist. And if like for example, there was this one universal moral that said that you cannot slap other people, or that is wrong, right? It is wrong to not slap other people, and when you say something is wrong, you imply, or maybe it means that, from what I understood, that you shouldn't do it, right? It's something that you can do it, but you shouldn't do it. I'm sorry. Therefore, if you like said that there's just this single universal model that said you cannot slap another person, how can you prove that this model exists? I'm just saying it from a philosophical point. I also think there was maybe there was two people watching, and I don't know if it was me or you, but I think there was like another guy watching because there was two people. So because I saw your comment that it's never wrong to slap somebody. That's what you think. But in this hypothetical scenario that there is a universal model that says you cannot slap somebody in any circumstances, what is even a point of having that universal model if you still can do it? And what I'm arriving is that the only way for a universal model to actually make sense and to exist if there's a God, like for example a Christian God that says you cannot kill. Because if you do kill, you can kill, right? It's your choice. If you kill, you go to heaven. I'm sorry. If you kill, you go, or like you break one of the commandments, you technically go to hell. Now, I made an example with a Christian God. The Christian God is different, right? Even if you kill, you still can go to heaven if you repent for your sins, because it's a whole deal that if you believe in Jesus Christ, that whatever, it's not the point. A hypothetical God that has this. So the only way for universal model to exist, if you have a hypothetical God that states, like for example, you cannot kill, you cannot slap somebody else, and if you do, you will have eternal suffering, or you will have a penalty, you have consequences for what you did, because not having consequences would make it useless, right? Why just saying that something is wrong, even if it's universal, that I can slap somebody, nothing will happen if I slap somebody, right? So that's why I don't think that there's universal moral, because I don't think there's a God, and that's the only way for universal moral to exist. Tell me if you agree, my viewer. Tell me if you agree, and if you have something to say. Very good. It's actually exquisite. No, that's not true. What the fuck? No, I just literally proved to you that it's not true. I want to hear your point of view. Why? What you mean save me a bit, baby? What you mean save me a bit? You usually told me the messages I was eating and I had this bit.
I knew it. I knew you were gonna.
I'm gonna smoke a cigarette. But you have to tell me why. Please, my viewer, tell me why you think universal moral can be a thing. Because they can't. I literally proved to you, if a God exists, then yes, right? But you can't really prove that there's a God, so you can't really prove that universal moral exists. No, you just. And I honestly don't even remember why I started talking about ethics, because I was talking about antinatalism. I was talking about antinatalism, about it's not immoral to bring a child into this world, right? Sorry, but I agree with you. You agree with me with what? With what? That you can prove there's the God, or that universal morals can be a thing and they can only exist with a hypothetical God? I don't know, I wasn't here when you said that. Said what? Baby, please, give me more... I fucking got scared, oh my god. I thought somebody broke into the... with everything you said. What do you mean you weren't careful? Okay, so listen to me I will just explain it in 2 seconds. There can be a universal moral, or you can prove it, because there's a God doesn't exist, and for a universal moral to exist, it would be, for it to be useful and for it to be actually make sense, you have to have consequences in any way. Because when you say that something is wrong, when you have a moral claim and saying that something is wrong, slapping somebody's wrong, saying that slapping somebody's wrong doesn't really serve you anything if you don't actually punish the people that do those things. And there's also another possibility that universal moral exists, and they exist, but we don't know, because the things that they say, like for example, if there was just one universal moral that said that you cannot slap somebody else, either there's 2 ways. Either you can slap it and then you have consequences, or you're not, and if you're not, it's basically useless. Or you cannot slap somebody else. You're literally physically impaired to do that. You don't even know you can do that, and that basically solves the problem of having a God, for having for moral universal to exist, for universal moral to exist, that you can really do that. And let's say I cannot slap somebody else because it's a universal moral. I cannot do that. Like, I cannot even think about doing that. I cannot even proceed with the action of doing that. And we technically can prove that we have universal moral that don't allows us to think like that, because maybe it's universally wrong to, I don't know, fly, right? It's universally wrong to be able to fly, but the only way for it to be a universal moral is that you can prove it, right? You can even know that you would like to fly. You don't even know that in this scenario you wouldn't be able to think about the fact of flying or even try to fly, if it makes sense. And that basically solves the problem of, for a universal moral to exist, to have a hypothetical God to punish the people that don't respect the universal moral, to make it make sense. And that's why when antinatalists say that it's immoral to bring a child into this world, because you take it from a point, him or it from a point of non-existence to life, you basically expose him to pleasure and pain. And antinatalists argue that there's abundantly more pain than pleasure, and they say it's immoral. It's not immoral, right? It's not immoral because it's immoral from their point of view, right? You shouldn't do it, right? So the whole point of view is they're just taking it from a point of logic, right? They're just saying it would be better to not experience any pleasure or pain than to suffer and experience a small amount or an equal amount of pleasure. So that's, I've also tried to debate this. You shouldn't do it. What? Shouldn't do what? Shouldn't do what? Come on, please, just write something longer. You shouldn't bring a child into this world. You can bring a child into this world. It may be wrong, but if there's no God to punish you, then it's useless. But suffering bad? Yes, suffering is bad, but you can have suffering without pleasure. You can have pleasure without suffering. It's impossible, right? It's in the chemical reactions of the brain. You and me good. I love you too. Like, I've also tried to talk this about with ChatGPT because I didn't have anybody to talk about this theory. Is that I thought, okay, let's say that there's a machine that allows you to be always in a very high amount of pleasure, like the dopamine is high and the serotonin and the oxytocin is high. Basically, from what I found out is that cannot be possibly, that you cannot possibly do that, because your brain always adapts, and that high level amount of pleasure will become the normal, and everything below that will become, let's say, suffering, let's say less pleasuring, and more, so it's always about more, and that's the reality of our biology. I don't even know why I said that. I actually forgot what I was saying. So the problem with antinatalists is that what they're saying has some truth to it, like it makes sense what they're saying, but they can't really prove it ethically, right? You can't prove it ethically. From all the things that I said before, you can't. So basically, the whole goal of antinatalists is to just end humanity because we suffer, and I think that, like, that's literally the goal, right? I would think that every antinatalist would like, because maybe I think that's their goal, for anybody to not have children, right? But then after a generation, there will be no human left on Earth, right? And that's obviously a very hot take, let's say, that I don't agree with, but it's a very dark thought that can come to your mind, and that's basically what they're trying to do, the antinatalists. It's puffy. Look, boing. So even now, with my argument, I didn't really solve anything, but I gave a new perspective, and I also I reconfirm my theory that the silence. What silence? We won't touch. Okay, you can come. You can come if you want. I will finish the cigarette and then I'll go. Okay, I will turn off the cigarette. I will end the stream. Bye, everybody that watched the stream. I hope you live a good life, and bye. But me, human, you smart human. I'm not smart, I'm just a human. Bye bye. How can I end the stream? How do I end the stream? Oh my god. Yes.